tough. Hello, America. We got a man down here. Happened shortly before we went on the air. No, he's gone.
No, I think he's.
No, he's really. No, he's gone.
No, I'm.
No.
I'm actually not.
No, he's gone.
No, really.
I think
I'm struggling, but I'm not dead.
That's good. No, here's the thing. The GOP is dead.
Wait.
Ding dong. No, they
totally.
No, they're okay. They're totally dead. Let me just. There you go. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program and to the Blaze, America. This is the network that you are building. The media is celebrating that the fact that the GOP is on its deathbed. And the president did some excessive GOP is dead celebrating at the inauguration as well, ignoring the 60 million Americans who voted against him while laying out a wildly progressive agenda. But look at me, I've got a white. People just don't get white coats from the white coat store. I'm a doctor, man. It's dead. But here's what the media and the president still don't understand. We're celebrating the death of the establishment GOP right along with them. Yeah, I've got a cake and hats and like party streamers and everything today because they're dead.
I felt
Thank you. Yeah. They are refusing to confront the cancer within the party. Like some cake? We had this made for us. Death of the GOP.
I want some.
We're happy that they're dead. Progressive light Republicans who care about winning more than really anything else. Not leading America in the right direction. They cave to political correctness rather than sticking to principles. The principles are lost. And we drive America further into debt and economic crisis. The only difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is the speed. I mean, wasn't that John McCain who was, going to slow down the citizenship thing by saying we're gonna tighten the screws down on the border just a little bit? You're standing there and giving citizenship to illegals. The destination is exactly the same. So with every elephant that meets its demise, and this one is actually kind of that was Edison that killed that elephant. As every elephant meets its demise, the real elephant's dying is really, really sad. But the GOP elephant dying, I'm actually, here, have some cake. Would you like some? We celebrate as well, President Obama. We celebrate right along with you. Where the media goes off the rails is when they say, as Time magazine did today, that it is the substance of conservative principles that need changing. No, it is not. The GOP is ignoring its deepest liability, not the tone, but the substance of its policies. The GOP hasn't stuck to its guns or its policies or its principles in I don't know how long. All they are is about winning. Who should be in the tent? We need a bigger tent. That's the wrong angle. And that's why we object. We have to make it clear now because progressives are all going in. And they are putting every chip on the table, both the left and the right progressives. Look at CBS running a segment about the as American as apple pie idea of giving up on the Constitution.
I've got a simple idea. Let's give up on the Constitution. I know it sounds radical, but it's really not. Constitutional disobedience is as American as apple pie.
Really? Yeah, let's listen to the guy who hasn't trimmed his beard. Then we have a president attacking conservative news outlets. In this case, last weekend it was Rush and Fox News, blaming them for the gridlock in Washington, D.C. Quote, on almost every issue, it's, Democrats and Republicans can't agree, as opposed to looking at why it is that they can't agree. Who exactly is preventing us from agreeing? One of the biggest factors is going to be how the media shapes debates. If a Republican member of Congress is not punished on Fox News or by Rush Limbaugh for working with a Democrat on a bill of common interest, then you'll see more of them doing it. Of course, because all they care about is winning and their own power. But that claim, if I understand it right, that he's claiming that the only thing stopping Republicans from signing off on all of his progressive ideas is backlash from people like Fox or Rush or even people like me, good. To that I say, amen and praise Jesus. Because if that stops them from being progressive weasels, just taking everything for their own power, amen, brother, amen. What do you say we do it some more? But what the media and the president fail to understand is, while the elephant may be dying, and it's not dying, it's dead. What isn't dying in America is personal responsibility. How do I know? You can trust me. I'm a doctor. Americans know we cannot spend more than we take in. We keep hearing about all the cops who are being fired across America's most dangerous cities, right? They threaten more violence if there's more spending cuts, right? We told you before about America's most violent city, Detroit. They sent out a warning that their city is in a war zone and that people should enter at their own risk. And don't bother calling 911 if you have an emergency, because they might not answer that call. That sounds bad. Whoa, can't get the police to show up. Well, there's a couple things these cities all across the country like this they have in common, and it's these things. First, they're among the highest spending cities. They're usually the biggest union cities, the most progressive cities, and they have the most debt. But there's something else that they have in common: a lack of common sense. As poverty increases in these cities, and as the ability to protect them is diminished, the president wants to start taking weapons away from everyone. Now hang on, you have the police saying they can't defend the cities. Hey, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, you liking that one, huh? Yeah, it's great. They can't answer your 911 call. But also the president wants you to turn in a gun or any way you can defend yourself. Who disarms people when you can't afford police? It's idiotic, it's suicide, and it's absolutely unconstitutional. And it's the president's big plan. By the way, I shouldn't say everybody's guns go away. I mean, Senator Feinstein's weapon ban has a couple of exceptions in there, in case you're wondering who might be exempt. Well, let's just look at it. The assault weapons ban includes a grandfather clause that specifically exempts all assault weapons lawfully possessed at the date of enactment from the ban. The legislation, however, also excludes weapons used by government officials. Okay, law enforcement and retirement, but government officials? So is that do as I say and not as I do? We are in the wake of a media onslaught for pushing for more gun control. Yet 61% of Americans say new gun regulations won't change anything. The media is telling us that we're on the wrong side, except the facts is that they are on the wrong side. 61% of Americans say this isn't good. Common sense is not dead. It's just dead in New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. It's stronger than every place else. And I have a feeling something else I'm starting to hear a heartbeat of: personal responsibility. This weekend, a Wisconsin sheriff got into an awful lot of trouble because he urged residents in a new radio ad to arm themselves because there just aren't enough officers to defend them. Watch.
I'm Sheriff David Clark, and I want to talk to you about something personal: your safety. It's no longer a spectator sport. I need you in the game. But are you ready? With officers laid off and furloughed, simply calling 911 and waiting is no longer your best option. You can beg for mercy from a violent criminal, hide under the bed, or you can fight back. But are you prepared? Consider taking a certified safety course in handling a firearm so you can defend yourself until we get there. You have a duty to protect yourself and your family. We're partners now. Can I count on you?
You have a duty to protect yourself and your family. Think of that. You have a duty to protect yourself. That's true. We're partners now. He has to ask, can I count on you? We used to be the other way around. Sheriff, can I count on you? He got a ton of heat from the typical leftist organizations after this ad, claiming that he wants to start a Dirty Harry style Old West. You know what? If the cops aren't showing up, man, I've got a duty and a responsibility and a right to protect myself. I'm telling you, I've said this before, make friends with your local sheriff. Your sheriff, donate to your local sheriff. Help your local sheriff. Your sheriffs are your best friends in this fight. The sheriff went on CNN this morning and defended his ad. Watch this.
There are certain situations, and I think most people get that, where 911 is going to be of no use. For instance, once the wolf is at the door, once the intruder is inside your home, once you're on the street and someone sticks a gun in your face to take your car or your wallet, you don't have the option of calling 911. And in those situations, there are certain things that you can do to protect yourself.
Yeah, you hear how he backed down? Oh no, that's right, he didn't. Because he's a spine, and I know, because I'm a doctor. He didn't cave at the first sign of political correctness, first sign of media pressure. People are waking up. And more people need to wake up that they are the first responders. And here's the great news. The people who are waking up are waking up way before Greece woke up. In fact, Greece, they're still asleep. As people riot in the streets, the 911 calls go unanswered. They're totally left helpless in the will of the rioters. A lot of people are saying, that's not going to be me. Dozens of sheriffs around the country are making sure that people understand that even if gun laws are passed, they will not enforce them, affirming their oath to support the Constitution, specifically the Second Amendment. Out of the 33 county sheriffs in New Mexico, 28 are taking the oath. 28 of 29 in Utah sent a letter to Obama saying they're not going to enforce any new gun laws they believe are unconstitutional. Sheriffs in California, Oregon, Missouri, Kentucky, Texas, Florida, Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, New York, Oklahoma, they've all expressed the same darn thing. Please, sheriffs, somebody deputize me. I'll ride in the car with you. I'd love to help you enforce this. People are viewing reality through a lens of common sense everywhere except in the hallowed halls of Congress, in the DNC, in the RNC, in the White House, and in the hallways of the media. But everywhere else, common sense is starting to wake up. The president is blinded by his utopian European academia spectacles. The correct course is clearly obvious. Not enough police. Make sure people can defend themselves. And if the GOP were alive and knew what they stood for, they'd be on that bandwagon and they would be with 61% of the American people. But the GOP isn't doing that, really. And America's top brass in either party, not really. The GOP isn't dying because they won't compromise. They're dying because they don't articulate or even understand the principles of freedom. And in fact, they sabotage them. So we face a choice. We follow the suggestions of progressive elitists who defy common sense. I mean, how can they protect us while at the same time they spend so much that we can't hire any cops? If we do that, more people will die if we follow that course. If we follow the Republicans, we arrive at exactly the same miserable fate. Our arrival is just maybe slightly delayed. Or we can have cake and celebrate the end and the death of the GOP. Mr. President, you're not scaring people when you say that the elephant is dead. Many of us are celebrating. We love the fact that the people like John McCain will finally go away. I was talking to a guy in a hospital this weekend. I was up at a hospital and I'd asked for your prayers. My daughter is in the hospital and it was dicey the last 10 days in our family. And so I flew up to be with her this weekend in the hospital, and I go in and he's the guy at the triage and he's the nurse, and we get my daughter situated, and he says, just like this, "I'm a conservative." He said, "You should live someplace where you don't have to whisper that." He said, "My wife got a paycheck for the first time in over a year." He says, "My wife and I, we feel so alone, and it's not just because we're surrounded by liberals." He said, "We campaigned for the GOP in the last 2 elections. We worked for the GOP. We went out and we put signs out. We talked to our friends." He said, "We're done. We are done." He said, "I'm not a GOPer. I'm not a Republican." He said, "I'm an American, and I think I'm more libertarian than anything else. I talked to him about joining or starting a 9/12 project. The GOP is done, and that's a good thing. It should have happened, the Democrats should have done what's happening to the GOP before they lost their soul. But be careful what you wish for. The GOP is easy to beat. And the Democrats should be aware that truth is not easy to beat. And when we get some truth tellers in there who aren't elephants, you're going to be better. You're going to be better, and it's going to be harder to beat them. But on our side, remember, freedom is tough. This will make us examine absolutely every policy we've ever been for. You think you're for the Patriot Act, you think you're not for the Patriot Act. You think you're for foreign aid, and you think you're for Israel, or you're not for Israel. Why? Everything has to be examined once you become free and independent of the parties, and that's a good thing. We're always getting our butt kicked, but it's a good thing this time. Freedom isn't easy. It requires us to be constantly engaged mentally and physically. But everybody in the media and in Washington, their solution is to give in, to cave. So you can say, you've won. Won what? You've ended up compromising away all of your beliefs. Well, but we have a big tent. We're popular. We're liked. We have a huge tent. Why do people go into a tent? What is the tent theory? This drives me out of my mind. It's a huge tent. We got to get a bigger tent. Why? Nobody wants to go into the stupid tent. Nobody wants to be in that tent. There's nobody in it. Don't you see everybody beating for the exits? Why? Because they know it's starting to collapse. Why? Everybody always forgets the stakes. What holds a tent up? It's not the people inside that hold it up. It's the stakes of a tent. That's the foundation. Without the stakes, the tent doesn't stand. So I don't care if you have the whole world in there. The stakes are the principles that hold the tent up. If you don't have the stakes, if you don't have something that tethers that tent, everybody's going to have that tent come down anyway. And that's why the GOP is losing. They don't even know what stakes are. They don't hold to any of their principles. They're worried about, come on into the tent, come into the tent. Libertarianism is the biggest tent. And I know there's a lot of libertarians that don't want me as a libertarian. I don't really give a flying crap. That's part of the reason. I mean, are you kidding me? Wow, I thought you understood libertarianism. I'm independent. I don't have to be exactly like you, and you don't have to be exactly like me. We just have to know what our principles are. What are your principles? If you know the stakes that hold the tent up, the tent gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's solid. If you know the stakes, you win. But you're not building it just to win. You're building it because the stakes are important. The president wants you to feel like we're in a state of collapse. Well, if you're in the GOP, you're in a state of collapse. And I cheer. I'm going to have cake in a minute. The elephant is in collapse. Good. Ding dong, the witch is dead. But anyone with common sense wants the elephant and the donkey to collapse because they're both frauds. We have to start thinking for ourselves. And by the way, speaking of frauds, I'll be back in a minute. I got to go skeet shoot with the President of the United States. He does it all the time. Okay, I know the last time I said something, I said I'm just gonna work out a theory here, and I'm trying to understand the president, and I said, I think the president, and it went poorly. But this time I think I can make the case. Let me give you the theory. I think the president is a girl. I think he may, I don't know if he was ever born a man or if he had it lopped off. I don't know. But I think he's almost entirely all girl. Girl power. Let me give you an example. Heard this story last week. Former President Bill Clinton warned the president that it was unwise. Don't mock the Second Amendment supporters. So what does the president do? He immediately comes out and he tries to assure Second Amendment supporters that guns are safe with him because he loves guns and goes shooting all the time. I heard that this morning. I'm like, he goes shooting all the time? Quote, in fact, up at Camp David, we do skeet shooting all the time. And I have profound respect for the traditions of hunting that trace back in this country for generations. And I think those who dismiss that out of hand make a big mistake. First of all, Second Amendment, sir, is not about hunting. But I appreciate the cute little effort, Mr. Constitutional Scholar. Now, I'd like to believe him, but I stood this morning in my bathroom as I'm getting ready for work, and yes, actually thinking that all of this worked. And I'm standing there this morning and I'm thinking, I'm trying to imagine him even holding a shotgun. I mean, I'm just having, close your eyes for a second. Picture him dressed, with the hunter red, red or orange vest and the hunting cap with the ear flaps. Picture big, giant ear flaps. Okay. Take you a minute to, okay, got it. And shooting skeet. Does that work for you? See the guy just looking natural, in camouflage and the big helmet on his head and a gun of any sort looking natural. I think the only thing that President Obama has in common with guns is he's from Chicago, where they've confiscated all of the guns, and yet they still keep showing up. I mean, he's probably just used to hearing them go off and all of his neighbors hearing the guns go off all around town whenever you drive anywhere. But other than that, I don't think the shoe fits. Let me go back to my theory that President Obama is a girl. A, evidence. The guy wears mom jeans. I mean, I think the mom jeans, I think he rides a wimpy bike with ridiculous helmets in his mom jeans. Okay? He throws a ball like a girl. Now, I just want to point out, I do too. But I don't wear the mom jeans or ride a goofy girl. Look at that. I was better than that. And I was horrible. Okay? And he throws like a girl with her non-throwing arm. Okay? And speaking of arms, could we show? Okay. His arms are not her arms. His wife's arms are more mannish and muscular than his. And no self-respecting man would ever allow this to happen. I'm just thinking my wife's arms and then my arms. I take that last one back. This is the least manliest man in America. He is. Girl power to the 10th power. And we're supposed to believe that he and his posse go shooting all the time. Yeah. His idea of a rowdy, reckless time of playing loud music in the hallway while putting cigarettes out in the carpet and resisting the bourgeois society's stifling constraints. And he's also skeet shooting. Putting the cigarettes out in the hallway, if that's your idea of manly behavior, man card revoked. By me. That's sad. Now, I just want to point out that it is a little bit hypocritical of me to call somebody else a girly man, but as a girly man, I mean, I'm like 95% chick, and I admit that. Got it. I can only bench press maybe the bar, and that's only because they tricked me. I thought it was an actual bar, but I like to watch the Super Bowl commercials. I could skip the game. My son throws a baseball twice as far as I can. He's 8. I enjoy fashion design. I like musicals. I cry a lot. I couldn't win a fight against Betty White. That said, I do skeet shoot. I love to go shooting. I have seen skeet, and I've broken the skeet. I've gone target shooting many, many times. And unlike some, I do have video proof of me skeet shooting where the president, of course, he's never around a camera. That's the thing. Nobody ever has a camera around this guy. Wish we could get a photograph or a video of him sometime. We scoured the internet looking for any evidence of girl Obama ever being anywhere near a gun, picking it up. Photo op, something. This is the only photo we know of existence, and I'm not kidding you. Yes, it was right after he killed Obama, or Osama, I believe. Oh, no, that's just a water gun, and a manly sprint it is. I imagine the evidence is not out there because if he did try to get it, I guarantee you, he got knocked on his girly butt. I mean, honestly. He said this weekend, I wouldn't even allow my child to play football. I'm not sure if I would. Who says that? Seriously. No one but my wife and the chicken chief. That's it. That's it. He says, I'm a big football fan, but I have to tell you, if I had a son, I'd have to think long and hard before I let him play football. Either this guy is a woman or he has just been totally co-opted by his wife. Because even I don't watch football. Even I have had the argument with my wife. Back off. He's 8. It's football. So we're supposed to believe that a guy who can barely stomach the idea of something as violent as football gets up in the morning and he's like, you know what I want to do? I want to shoot some skeet. Really? Yeah, I mean, I was brought up in Hawaii. I went to Harvard, I was active in the Harvard and Columbia University skeet shooting community. It's insulting. It is insulting. But when you think about it, put a nice flower basket there on the president's pink bike and pink helmet. I mean, this is more likely the truth on this guy, really. He's a chick. Kind of works on him, doesn't it? If he had a gun, it would... I think that's not a doctored picture, quite honestly. If he had a gun, I'm guessing it would match his purse. I want the Hello Kitty gun. I love it. His stated reason for supposedly loving the Second Amendment is equally insulting. Quote, if you grew up and your dad gave you a hunting rifle when you were 10 and you went out and spent a day with him and your uncles, and that became part of your family's traditions, you can see why you'd be pretty protective of that. Really? This from a guy who taught constitutional law? This from a chick who taught constitutional law? The Second Amendment is for self-defense, namely against an out-of-control government. And if you think of the idea of an out-of-control government is far-fetched, remember, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. God help us when all the conservatives get in the way of this president's progress. She would have had a gun instead of a knife. The movie would have been about 10 minutes long. The movie, based on a story by best-selling horror author Stephen King. Ooh. He's published yet another novel. Well, not really a novel, just more of a book. His typical books run about 15,000 pages, and he cranks them out faster than I do, and that's saying something. We've kind of gotten used to seeing a new Stephen King book every few minutes, but this one's different. Now, we're treated to a 25-page essay, imaginatively entitled, Guns. Man, that's why he gets the big bucks. I would have never thought of doing a book called Guns. Now, it might not be fiction per se, but I'm not sure. Don't worry, King fans, it's still fantastical. We get gems like this quote. To claim that American culture of violence is responsible for school shootings is tantamount to cigarette company executives declaring that the environmental pollution is the chief cause of cancer. So it's the guns that are the problem, not the sickness of the people who abuse them. The implication here is, because I'm using his example, cigarettes. Guns, like cigarettes, cause the disease. How? He goes on to suggest that the organization that supports gun rights, the NRA, is somehow or another responsible when an individual abuses those rights. He says, quote, "One only wishes Wayne LaPierre and his NRA board of directors," please make me a board of director, a sheriff and a board of director of the NRA. I'll die a happy man, please. "One could only wish that Wayne LaPierre and his NRA board of directors could be drafted to some of these violent scenes where they would be required to put on booties and rubber gloves and help clean up the blood, the brains, and the chunks of intestine still containing the poor wads of half-digested food that were in some innocent bystander's last meal." Wow, he's a poet. Right. Because the NRA is responsible for gun abuse, whether or not the abuser even happens to be a member. And, another thing I was just thinking, AAA should probably clean up the mess after any traffic fatalities because, they're out promoting driving and stuff like that. And some people go out and drink booze and they kill people in their car. And this is the guy who called me Satan's mentally challenged little brother. He's telling us the problem isn't the culture of violence. It's not, Steve? See, when I read that, I was going to argue, and then I went, no, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like somebody who's trying to cover his tracks. And then I remembered. Back in the 1990s, Stephen King was having a little trouble because he put out a book called The Gunslinger. Yeah. He also put out another one. Do we have The Rage? He also put out another one called The Rage. Well, Stevie, these were good. And if you remember right, America, we're talking about books now, so I have to have a pipe. The school shootings back in the 90s were linked to the novel by Stephen King called The Rage, which he had published under the pen name Richard Bachman. Richard Bachman couldn't be contacted for comment. Stephen King says, "I've never seen this Richard Bachman guy. I don't even know who you're talking about." The teenager, we've talked about him before, that killed the students at Paducah, Kentucky in 1997. He was reading that Stephen King book, had a copy of it in his locker. That prompted King to ask his publisher not to print any more copies. Said King in 1999, the amp culture atmosphere of make-believe violence in which so many children now have to live has to be considered part of the problem. Wait a minute. That's not what you're saying now. It has to be considered a problem. He also said, "I withdrew Rage, and I did it with relief rather than regret." Now compare that to what he's writing in his essay. "Yet I did see Rage as a possible accelerant, which is why I pulled it from sale. You don't leave a can of gasoline where a boy with a firebug tendency can lay hands on it." Right. "Nevertheless, I pulled it with real regret." Something changed here. Maybe he got worried that he'd no longer be able to mesmerize us with passages where we can find out that maybe the real villain in the story is a giant spider. That was genius. Why don't you put a little more thought into it? Write fewer pages, Steve. A spider? Thank you for it. It was, I wasn't pissed off after 800 pages. Neither was anybody else. But may I say, The Gunslinger. From a man who hates guns. Let me tell you about The Gunslinger. Oh, there is no violence in this one. May I? We have some music? They were in throwing range as he finished reloading, and a stick struck him on the forehead and brought blood in abraded drops. In 2 seconds, they'd be in with gripping distance. In the forefront, he saw Kennerly's younger daughter, perhaps 11, Subi, 2 male barflies, a whore named Amy Feldon. He let them all have it, and the ones behind them. Their bodies thumped like scarecrows. Blood and brains flew out in streamers. Oh, this is good. This is very good. They halted for a moment, startled. The mob faced shivering into individual bewildered faces. A man ran into a large screaming circle. A woman with blisters on her hands turned her head and cackled feverishly at the sky. The man who he had first seen sitting gravely on the steps of the mercantile store made a sudden and amazing load in his pants. I had time to reload just one gun. Dare I say provocative? But like that of so many of the notions in his essay, they're fiction. The NRA is standing up for your rights. The rights guaranteed you by the Constitution. Quite honestly, the rights guaranteed you by nature's God. They're nature's rights. You have a right to defend yourself, and no one can take that right away. Not even someone as spooky as Stephen King when he's in league with the chicken chief. This administration is full of hypocrites, and so is the GOP, and that's why they're dying. They turn a blind eye when it comes to facts, because the truth is irrelevant. They only use it when it's convenient. Nothing can remain consistent, and that's what most Americans are tired of. People in Washington say they want to ensure all children are cared for and cherished and always safe from harm. Well, A, you can't do that. But in reality, they don't care about your children or their safety, because if they actually cared, they would treat their children just the same as our children are treated. He would make sure that they were in schools with armed guards, armed protection. Since the Sandy Hook massacre, President Obama hasn't wasted any time exploiting the unthinkable tragedy to advance his political agenda. Oh, they may not go shooting all the time, but they know what an AR does, and they understand that it is ideal, I'm using their words, for personal defense in close quarters. This is the new policy, that these guns are ideal in close quarters. That's why the Department of Homeland Security is now requesting 7,000 additional AR-15s and 30-round clips. Wait a minute, I thought 7. No reason you'd have more than 7. Apparently, when these weapons are in the hands of the government, they become nice, safe, and effective weapons for personal security. Wow. But let's hop back on the hypocrisy train and see what's on the next stop. Joe Biden. Doot, doot. He says he thinks we need to have better mental health checks for people who buy guns. Well, the good news here on that one is, if that's true, guess what, Joe? You ain't getting one. I think you're nuts. But do you really think that people are going to stand up in line and take some mental health test? You think that's the way it's going to happen? You're going to be standing there at the gun store and they're like, okay, now let me ask you some questions here. That's not the way it's going to happen. Google is literally mapping your thoughts and actions. They know what you're capable of and already are predicting your next thoughts and actions. Siri is just the beginning of this. That's the way it will be done. And if you think that's crazy, just tell that crazy thought to the people who say, I can't get my name off the no-fly list and I didn't do anything wrong. They're also hypocrites when it comes to their phony war on bullying. Okay, everybody is against bullying. Everybody. Nobody wants kids bullied. Nobody wants any group bullied. But does anybody now think that the anti-bullying campaign is about boosting kids' self-esteem? If you do, listen to this. This came out today. All of a sudden, there's a new initiative to protect people's self-esteem, except all the anti-bullying campaigns only apply to, currently, the hot button is gays. Okay. Fat people, not so fast, not so fast. This is according to the left-wing rag, The Atlantic, an article that was just released. Fat people, maybe we should bully. Believe it or not. Because fat people need to be motivated by self-hatred. What if I said that about any other group of people? Any other group of people? I mean, let's take to their pet favorite now, homosexuality. We really would like to combat homosexuality through socially motivated self-hatred. Or this, are you gay or bisexual? Are you pleased with your life? Are you happy that your sexuality has made many ordinary activities such as marriage and conceiving children a little harder? Are you pleased when your gay children are called homo or otherwise teased at school? Fair or not. Do you know that many people look down upon people who are excessively flamboyant or homosexual, often in fact discriminating against them and making fun of them? Well, we're here to tell you, you can empower them by bullying them now. Really. Abandon the lost causes and embark on a new era of zero tolerance for homosexuality. I can't see how anybody would have a problem with that, do you? That's exactly what they are suggesting that you do to fat people. This is what the Atlantic's Lindsay Abrams is proposing. Bully them, shame them, and you'll boost their self-esteem. Really? How about slow people? How about people who are different in any way at all? I thought bullying was bad. No. When fat people are bullied, it gives them self-confidence. When everyone else is bullied, they commit suicide. The inconsistencies are horrifying. But none of this is about logical soundness. It's hypocritical. It's doublespeak, doublethink, progressives. And they are the masters at victimizing others. That's what they've done in Detroit and Washington, D.C., and everywhere else. They shroud their agendas in noble-sounding causes and maximize crises and tragedies to accomplish their goals. But make no mistake, this isn't about the Sandy Hook victims. This isn't about keeping your kids in a safe distance from the insane. It certainly isn't about protecting your kids from bullying. Michelle Obama won't let your kids have a potato chip because they need carrots and asparagus. But an article just came out saying smokers and fat people, we should just let them die. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I'm still kind of reeling from the fat thing. Isn't this the party of compassion? Some members on the left are even coming out saying, sure, abortion is murder, but who cares? This is a quote. Not all life is created equal. Whoa, I didn't know that. I can see why you want to abandon the Constitution and that dusty old document that says all men are created equal. Not to the left. It's going to be a great week on the show this week as we spin our compass around and try to find the points that will lead us into the future. Tomorrow, a little bit of history. Waco and Ruby Ridge, the truth when a government turns on the people. Wednesday, Foundations in Freedom, executive orders of the past. Thursday, women in combat. Oh, you're going to love Thursday's show. From Dallas, good night, America.